All right, guys. This is the Beachbody Muscle Building webinar, and today I'm talking about how to build muscle. And building muscle is probably the hardest thing you can do at the gym. Everyone, tries to build muscle, and no matter what you do, no matter how big you want to get, how big you are, it still takes ages. No matter if you know everything, you're doing everything right, it takes a long time. So muscle building is a very, very big topic, first of all. And, people have been doing it for, hundreds of years. Although in the last couple of decades, it's become a lot more it's a lot more based on science, which has made it really cool and science has made muscle building a lot easier for people. But still, even in your first year of training, you can only build a maximum of 7 kilos of muscle. Then after that, it drops to, half of that. After that, it's half of that. And then it keeps going on that cycle. So losing fat, you can lose like 20, 30 kilos in a year. So muscle building is significantly harder. So today I'm going to talk about, how to build muscle. All right, so let's get started. I'm Jude D'Souza, and I've been training myself for 6 years now. Trying to build muscle for the last, 5 years. I've been through 5 competitions, a lot of bulking and cutting cycles. And I've just been, spent my years trying to build muscle and trying to pack on size, which a lot of you are probably who are watching this want to do. So I'm going to go to the ins and outs on how to do it. All right, so first we've got the basics and the fundamentals of building muscle. Now, this isn't going to be really sciencey, so this is probably the only bit that's a little bit sciencey. So muscle mechanisms is just how you build muscle. So there's 4 ways to build muscle. There's muscle tension, which is progressive overload, which is simply putting more overload on the muscle over a period of time. Therefore, the muscle is going to grow and adapt. Then we've got muscle damage, which muscle damage is the eccentric reps, which are the negative reps. And so you've got when you lift up the weight, like a bicep curl, for instance, that's your concentric, and then your eccentric is going down. So you're positive and you're negative. The negative part of the movement is the muscle damage, and that's another mechanism. Then we've got metabolic stress, which is the pump. If you ever lift a weight and, you've done, more than 10 reps, you'll feel that burning sensation. Your muscle's full of blood, and that's called the pump. It's quite a unique feeling. And, Arnold Schwarzenegger said it's like he feels like it's coming, like he's coming all the time when he's got the pump. So that's really, that's a great feeling to have. And that's why a lot of people look at themselves in the mirror, because they have a pump on. And, when you have a pump, you look great. So, and, you're forever chasing that pump, because once you leave the gym, you don't have that pump anymore. And then, you want to be as big as your pump, and you can never reach there, because if you finally reach your pump, that pump of that time is going to be bigger than that. So forever chasing the pump is a phrase used in training and trying to build muscle. The last one is not often used. It's called it's submerging the muscle cell in lactic acid. So things where you do a static hold under tension. For example, if you were to do a pec fly, you would just slightly get in that completely stretched out range, and you'd hold the weight under that tension for 30 seconds. Your muscle cells will be there'll be a lot of lactic acid in there, and it'll burn like crazy if you can hold it for long enough. If you try, you can do this by doing something like a chest fly. Try doing 10 reps and then hold that last rep in the fully stretched phase for 30 seconds, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's quite an insane feeling. All right, we're going to move on now. So, okay, so now the main one out of those four is progressive overload. Now, this is the pinnacle of building muscle and something everyone needs to understand, because progressive overload is the king of everything, and especially for beginners. So there's other tactics like those other three muscle mechanisms, but progressive overload is the main tactic used for beginners, and progressive overload needs to be applied when you're trying to, progress. So when progressive overload is putting more load on the muscle over a period of time. So overloading the muscle over time progressively, yeah? So what we've got here is, now there's different ways to progressively overload. You can increase the weight, and then you can increase the weights, or you can increase the sets, or you can increase the reps, and then you can decrease the interval time. So, for example, if you were lifting a bench press for 3 sets of 10 with 60 kilos, and the next week you increased it to 62.5 kilos and did the exact same reps and sets, that's progressive overload. If you increase the sets to 4 sets and do 10 reps for 60 kilos, that's progressive overload. 3 sets for 12 reps, 60 kilos, that's progressive overload. Do the exact same 3 sets for 10 of 60 kilos, but with less rest time in between, that's progressive overload. So you've got, so you always want to be progressing and moving up. The easiest way to predict this is moving up in weight. That's the easiest way, and the easiest way for beginners to do it. So pick a set rate, pick a certain number of sets, pick a certain number of reps. And, the interval rest, you don't have to time it or anything, but generally you'll know about a minute, minute and a half, whatever it is for you. Just keep it roughly the same, and then make sure you're moving up with the weights. So that's the really important part. If you're squatting 100 kilos and in, 3-4 months, you're squatting 140 kilos, your legs are going to adapt to that. They're going to be like, it's going to be very hard for you not to grow doing that. So when you're lifting more, you're damaging the muscles more, and they're going to repair, and we're going to repair stronger to be able to handle that load much easier. And you keep pushing it. And that's the simplest way to build muscle is progressive overload. So when you're in the gym, the way I do it is not the way I do it. The way I preach you should do it is with a logbook, and I'm about to start this now, but I remember most of my weights. But if you don't have a good memory, I would write it down so you know exactly what numbers you have to hit and what numbers you have to beat in order to achieve progressive overload week to week. So write it down and track it. And now with my clients, I remember their weights as well, so I'm able to keep them progressing and keep them, making gains essentially. So yeah. All right. So we've got now I'm going to talk about how to set up your training split. So the training split is the way you split your body up throughout the week. We've got it used to be the basic one that everyone used to follow when they started the gym was chest day Monday, back day Tuesday, then shoulders Wednesday, arms Thursday, legs Friday. Simple as that. 5 days a week, your whole body once over. And this used to be done by everyone. The reason why it's not as effective, which we'll go into soon, but this was perpetuated through the muscle magazines back, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And the reason why this is effective for people who are very, very big is because they're taking a lot of steroids, a lot of chemicals, which increases your muscle protein synthesis, which your muscle protein synthesis is a driving force behind adaptive responses to exercise. So now what that means is when we train a muscle, for someone who's natural, hasn't taken any drugs or anything, your muscle protein synthesis lasts for 24 to 48 hours. So when you train chest, for instance, your chest will only receive growth from be recovering and growing from the next 48 hours after that chest session. So ideally you could train chest again and 48 hours after that again. So you want to optimize this in your training split. So for people who are doing the chest one day, then the back the next day, they're not optimizing that split unless they're on a lot of chemicals, which increases their muscle protein synthesis, which makes that, you know, you can last that up to 7 days. So they can only train their body once over, and it's not going to really affect them. But for people who don't want, who aren't like, you know, who are doing this normally, and naturally, their muscle protein synthesis is going to last 48 hours. So you have to utilize this to the best of your ability. And how you do this is training more frequently. So you don't train your body once over. You can train your body twice. You want to aim to train your body at least twice over. So what that means is, how I get most of my clients to do it, I'll do either, if they're training 4 days a week, it would be an upper day, a lower day, upper day, a lower day. So your body's getting trained over twice then. The most common one for people these days is a 6-day split called push-pull legs, push-pull legs. Pushing is all your pushing exercises, your chest, shoulders, triceps. Your pulling exercises, back and biceps, and your legs. And then you're doing that again over and hitting your body twice over, getting adequate, adequate work in. Now, so once you get your head around muscle protein synthesis and that, you know, you should be training a lot more frequently, you'll actually see a lot more gains. So when I switched my split up, it was about 2.5 years into training, and I think it was 2 years or 2.5 years into training, and I was benching 100 kilos. Once I started training more frequently, I started benching 3 times a week, training my back more often, all that sort of stuff. And I was training my body parts a minimum of twice a week. And my progress from the next 6 months, so from 2.5 to 3 years, my bench went up within 3 months, actually, from 100 kilos to 140 kilos, which was tremendous amount of strength, which also in turn was a tremendous amount of size. So I gained a lot from that, that flip of changing my training split. I recommend this for everyone. If you're doing a single day body split, I would recommend training more frequently, and you'll reap the rewards quite fast. Now, there's 3 things that you have to consider when training. There's frequency, volume, and intensity. So frequency is exactly what we just talked about, training your muscles more frequently. Volume is is sets times reps times weight. So volume is pretty much the workload you put your muscles under during a given session, or during anything really. And then there's intensity, obviously how hard you go and how close you go to failure. So we'll talk about failure a bit later on. So pretty much how intense you train, pretty basic. So how you want to balance that is you want to be getting the most volume in with adequate frequencies and training as intensely while being able to recover. That's quite a mouthful, but that's exactly what you want to do. So if you were training, so how I view it is I'd focus on 2 out of the 3 aspects. If you're training with a lot of frequency, like 2 to 3 times a week, and you're in training, I always choose frequency. Frequency is almost my key. And then either choose volume or intensity. So I'm training frequently. I'm always training twice a week on my body parts. I would then go into, I would either increase my volume, and then, so I would, I'd be doing a lot of sets, a lot of exercises, a lot of sets for that given body part each workout. So for chest, maybe if I was trying to choose frequency and volume, I'd do 2 chest sessions, 2 push sessions, like for example, so chest, shoulders, triceps, and my chest would be getting like 12, 15 sets, and that's a lot of volume because you do that twice over. You're getting 24, 30 sets, which is a lot of volume. So you're getting a lot of volume in. Now, volume is the main driver of hypertrophy, muscle building. So volume is very important, and you have to have adequate volume to actually grow. So there's adequate volume, and then increasing the volume is going to increase the workload on your muscles through progressive overload, as we said previously. So if I chose more frequency and intensity, then I would do something like I still do 2 chest sessions, for instance, and I would train a lot harder. So I would go way closer to failure. I'd be pushing really heavy weight, but I would also be balancing this by doing a lot less sets. So maybe instead of 12 to 15 sets, I'm only doing 9 sets, but those sets are quite intense and very close to failure, or maybe not even 9, maybe even 6 sets. So I would choose maybe 3 exercises, doing 2 sets to like very close to failure, and then that would be 6 sets for that chest. But I'm balancing my frequency and volume, and balancing my frequency intensity, and keep my volume relatively adequate, but not too low, but not too high. if you go crazy on this and, try to keep that frequency high, keep the volume high, keep the intensity high, you'll get injured. And I guarantee you this because I've tried this so many times. I train my upper body because my legs, my legs are pretty genetically gifted. I don't need to train them heaps for them to grow. So my upper body certain parts of my body are quite weak, especially my arms. So I try to increase all these factors, and what happens? Tendonitis in my triceps. So I train triceps 3 times a week. My volume was up there for triceps, 8 to 12 sets per session. My intensity was quite intense. I was doing a lot of compound movements on the triceps as well. So I got tendonitis, and that has happened so many times. And you'll get injured if you try to force all these three aspects of training. So make sure to focus on 2, but keep the other one adequate. So if you're focusing on frequency and volume, make sure you're not training like, you're just chilling out in the gym, yawning and stuff like that. Be quite intense, but don't go as close to failure, which we'll talk about shortly. Focusing on compound movements. Now, this is a big mistake I've seen a lot of beginners do, is they don't focus on compound movements. The compound movements are the movements that work more than one muscle at a time. So, for instance, your squat, your bench press, your deadlift, your shoulder press, your overhead shoulder press, your dips, your bent over row, your lat pull down. They're working a lot of more muscles than, for instance, a bicep curl, which works just your biceps. Well, it should be unless you're training, but it just works your biceps. So make sure to focus on those compound movements and make sure they're progressing. They're being overloaded the most, because if your bench press is going to go up, then, for example, your fly, which is an isolation, that's going to go up as well because your chest is getting stronger. So focus on your compounds. You're going to get much more bang for your buck and much more return on investment if you focus on your compounds. So keep your compounds first. Don't do any pre-exhaust bullshit for it. Make sure your compound movements are first. Try to go as strong and heavier in them as possible. Make sure they're progressing week to week, and you'll see tremendous size from just doing that simple thing. Put your isolations at the end where you're more fatigued then, and if you don't progress in them, it's not a big deal because you're still progressing on your compounds. You might be more tired because you are progressing, so your isolations might be on the same weight than like last week or the week before, for example. Now, form. Now, this one is very, very important. I see this so many times done wrong, and if I go to my gym right now, I would be there. I could literally pick out a thing from everyone. Like everyone, not many people understand form and the importance of form. And the reason why form is important is, for example, if you're doing a bench press and your scapula is retracted, chest is up, your back's arched, you're tucking in your elbows, you're benching perfectly. Just say you get to that 8th rep and your form breaks, and then you go for that 9th and 10th rep. The 9th and 10th rep aren't going to be overloading the muscles that were previously overloading in the 8th rep, in the last 8 reps. So therefore, those muscles aren't getting more fatigued, and you're not progressing you're not overloading those muscles that are already overloading. You're recruiting new muscles because that's what your body does. It wants you, if you want to lift more weight, if you want to keep lifting, your body's like, these muscles can't lift anymore. That's it. And what they're going to do, bring in other muscles. So to make sure your form's correct, make sure you know the cues. And as soon as your form breaks, stop the set, because that's over. You've hit failure, essentially. So keep the form the same. Know exactly how to do the form. Learn from someone how to do the form, and make sure you do 100, 200, 300 repetitions with the correct form. Reassess your form. I've reassessed my squat and deadlift so many times. Even when I started training, I'd video myself. I'd get up to a heavy weight. I'd go back over. I'd feel myself seeing what I was doing wrong, and I'd start again from a low weight. And I got progressively stronger that way by reassessing my form. Once you get your form right and you progress with the right form, you're going to progress a lot faster in the gym, even though you have a lower starting point. You're going to progress a lot faster. Your muscles are going to grow a lot more because you're contracting them properly under the proper load with the proper fatigue. So, guys, make sure you keep your form correct. Learn how to do every exercise properly, and make sure when you're struggling and you start fatiguing, make sure those cues are correct. Like in your mind, for example, a bench press, make sure you keep your chest up, keep your back arched, and just keep having that form cue in your back of your head. When it starts getting hard, just keep pushing, but still have that form cue in the back of your head. I always check. I've got it to a point where it's second nature to me, but you should be when you're starting out and you're struggling with this stuff, make sure to keep it in the back of your head, someone else is yelling to you, chest up, or something like that, like a personal trainer or a gym buddy or a friend or someone like that, because external form cues really do help you. And they've proved this in studies multiple times. So here we go, muscular failure. Now, like I said before, this is related to form, and also this is how to train within a set. So people take if you've got 3 sets, make sure you don't go to failure on the first set. Once you go to failure, you go home. Like, it's not worth keep training. Make sure if you want to go to failure, it's the last set of that given exercise or that muscle group. Just say you have 3 sets of 10 of 60 kilos in your logbook and you need to hit that. If you've done the 3 sets of 10, if you've done the first set of 10 and you fail, you're not going to get the next 2 sets of 10. There's no way. There's just no way. So even if you didn't have like a specific goal in your lifting weight, if you hit that failure point, muscular failure, you're not going to be able to recover properly from it in order to do the rest of your training and workout. You can almost ruin your whole workout going to failure in that first exercise if you do it too early. Now, there's two types of ways to go to muscular failure. Now, muscular failure is very, very effective. And the problem is it's misused, and that's what I'm talking about here. That's why I say don't go to failure, but it is a very effective technique of building up metabolites. And what this means is when you build up metabolites in your muscles, you're going to get more metabolic stress, and that's what you want. You want to recruit those upper muscle fiber thresholds by making your muscles go to failure. What everyone says, go hard, go home. Failure is really good, all that sort of stuff. It is good, but it's only good in high reps. So, I mean, reps over probably 8. If you go higher than 8 and you fail, that's all right. But make sure it's on the last set of a given exercise. And then you're going to either a different muscle group. You're not working the same head of the muscle, that sort of stuff, because you go to, just say you go from a bench press to a chest press machine, and you failed on the bench press, your chest press is going to be significantly weaker. But if you go from a bench press and you failed on that last set, and then you go to, a tricep pull down, that's all right, because that, you're not using your chest anymore. So make sure when you go, and I'm about to explain why, but make sure if you go to failure, you go, it's in the upper rep ranges. Why you don't go in the lower rep ranges, you get no benefit from going to complete muscular. You don't, because what happens when you go in low reps and you fail, it's not actually your muscles fail. Your muscles are failing, but your nervous system fatigues. And when your nervous system fatigues, you don't get any metabolite buildup. You don't get any of that metabolic stress. And what happens is that you take a lot longer to recover, and it'll ruin the rest of it. It won't ruin, but it'll impact the rest of your week's training, because once you fatigue your nervous system like that, your nervous system isn't going to be able to come back and be able to lift those heavy weights again during the next couple of days. So going to muscular failure with high reps is much more optimal if you want to build muscle, but make sure to do it in the right way. Don't go to muscular failure every set. And if someone's pushing you muscular failure every set, that's just stupid. Don't do that. Just go close to it, where you're very, very, if you did one more rep, you'd hit failure. If you stop before that, that's not muscular failure. So make sure you go close to muscular failure, but not hitting muscular failure until you're on those last sets. So that's a really, unless your workout's going to be impacted. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's terrible, but your workout's definitely going to be impacted, which means your progress is going to be impacted, which means your gains are going to be impacted. And it's very, very suboptimal to go to muscular failure through every set. It's not hard training, it's stupid training. So go to muscular failure on the last set of that given muscle group or exercise. All right. So occlusion training. Now this one just come out in the last couple of years, and I wanted to talk on this because this really helped bring up my arms, which were lagging at the time, and it's also helped me fight through injuries. Occlusion training, injuries are a big part of training, and when you're trying to build muscles, sometimes you're going to go heavy to recruit those upper threshold muscle fibers, and you're going to sometimes get hurt, because if you're lifting in a less than 5 rep range to go heavy, sometimes you just get hurt, and because you're putting more load and your nervous system is failing sometimes. All right, so if you do, get injured, or you want to try this out at the end of your training to incorporate something new, occlusion training is awesome. Now, this has been a lot more popular because there's been a few studies that have come out on occlusion training. And how occlusion training works is you lift about, I think it's 20 to 30% of your 1 rep maximum, and you're lifting a very light weight. But what you're doing is you're still able to recruit all your muscle fibers and induce metabolic stress, because what you're doing is you're tying off your limbs. So as you can see in the picture, the arms are tied off from the shoulder insertion. So tying your arms off, you can train biceps and triceps like this. You want to tie your limbs off at about 90% tightness, and there still wants to be some blood flow, but not too much. So the blood can get into the muscle, but it can't escape the muscle. Now, this induces a crazy pump. Like, it's really, really painful. And if you can bear through this, it's very, very effective. So if you want to try this and try something new, or you are injured on, for example, if you're injured on, if you have tendonitis or anything, use occlusion training, because you can go light and still get the effects of going heavy, which is very, very effective in the long run. You're not taking any real time off that training that, is going to stimulate growth. So you can do this on your legs as well and your calves. So if you want to train on your legs, you tie a tourniquet or a wrap or anything like that around up close to your hip. And if you want to do calves, just below your knees. You're just cutting off that. It's not bad for you, by the way. I know it sounds bad cutting off your circulation. Your arm might go a little bit blue if you're too starved, but just make sure it's not cutting off complete oxygen. That's the main thing. You just want to quite tight, and you'll feel the pump. It's insane. Give it a try if you even want to know what a pump is. All right. Now, this is super important for building muscle. So nutrition. So you can build muscle in a deficit. And what I mean by deficit is less calories than your maintenance. So your maintenance calories is the calories you require to keep your body weight, accounting for all the activities you do and stuff like that, for example. So you have everyone has a maintenance set of calories that they need to eat to maintain their body weight. A caloric deficit is less than that. A caloric surplus is more than that. For a caloric deficit, you can still build muscle in a caloric deficit. Once you start getting leaner and leaner, it is a lot harder to, it becomes virtually impossible to build muscle. So it is possible, especially for beginners, to build in a caloric deficit. It's close to impossible for someone advanced trying to build muscle in a caloric deficit. So if you want to build muscle, you have to be in a caloric surplus, or at least at maintenance calories. But to be effective, you have to be in a caloric surplus of 200 to 500 calories. Depends on your metabolism and how much room you like. Just say if you're eating 3,000 calories, then you might want to go to 3,200. If you're eating 4,000 calories, you might want to go to 4,400, for example. So you don't want to be in too much of an excess. You don't want to be in, because if you're in a 500 caloric excess, that's about a pound of body weight every week that you're going to gain from this. And you can't gain a pound of muscle in a week. So I would recommend a 200 calorie surplus if you're trying to build muscle. Now, to break this up, we've got protein intake, which now this is very over exaggerated by everyone in bodybuilding. For a natural and someone who isn't taking drugs, I would recommend a protein intake of 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, or 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that would be, if you weigh 100 kilos, that would be 90 grams of, is that right? 100 kilos, 100 kilos would be 180 grams of protein, for example. So you're still getting, and what this allows you to do, if you are eating an adequate amount of protein, you're going to be able to grow maximally. Any more protein is sort of a waste. It's not really, because it probably will get converted into carbs. But if you eat 180 grams of protein and 100 kilos, you probably have a lot more room to play with your carbohydrates. Now, why I just say your carbohydrates? Because building muscle is very effective when your fats are low and your carbohydrates are very high. So you still need fats in your diet to maintain your hormone levels. If your fats are way too low, like people who go on competition, this sometimes happens. They put their fats too low, and what ends up happening is, your testosterone crashes, your estrogen crashes, and then those are required to build muscle. So you're not going to have a fun time. So I'd keep your fats about 50 to 60 to 70, anywhere anywhere around that range, maybe even higher if you have a lot higher calories to play with. But your carbohydrates, I would up them as high as possible. They're a fuel source, and they're going to, if more carbs, more glycogen in the muscle, more water in the muscle, you're going to be a lot stronger. You're going to spare a lot of the protein as well. So if you're trying to build muscle, I'd have those carbs as high as possible. And if you have a high carb, moderate protein, low fat diet, it's going to be very ideal to build muscle in. And that's what I've seen across the board. I've seen it across many people. You can still build muscle on other diets. I'm just showing you what I believe to be the most effective. So if you hear of the keto diet where you go no carbs, that's not effective for people who weight train, because you can't, you can still train, but you're not going to be able to get a pump. You're not going to be able to be very energetic in the gym. You're not going to be pushing very heavy weights. It's much harder to, your energy system is much less effective as you're using ketone bodies as your fuel source as opposed to carbohydrates. It's right there for energy generation. So carbohydrates go right in the muscle, and they're right there to use. You're able to push much heavier, able to utilize them as fuel much more readily. So make sure for example, if you guys have 3,000 calories to play with, I would, 100 kilos, 180 grams of protein, 60 grams of fat, and the rest of it carbohydrates. As simple as that. Yeah. All right. We've got now supplements. So supplements, we've got this topic is very broad, but it can be narrowed down very simply. The supplement industry is huge. It's $1 billion industry, probably multiple $1 billion by now, but it is a massive industry, and they try to sell you anything, and most of it is crap. So the main ones I would consider are creatine monohydrate, whey protein, and fish oil. I'm going to go over them in a second, but first I want to tell you why some of the supplements are shit. So we've got the testosterone boosters. First, no matter what you do, if your testosterone is still in that natural range, you're not going to get any more significant gains. Every human has a healthy testosterone range. If you're in the upper limit, it's not going to do anything. If you're in the lower limit, it's not going to do anything. As long as you're within that healthy range, you're going to get the same results. If you are in, the only way to get really crazy gains is to go on a super physiological range, which is beyond your scope, which involves other supplements that are illegal. So there's creatine monohydrate. Creatine monohydrate is probably the most legit supplement, and I definitely recommend this for anyone trying to build muscle. It's proven time and time again to be very, very effective. And you only need 5 grams a day. What this does is it's going to put water inside your muscles, which is going to give you a bigger look, first of all, which is awesome. But it's also going to make you a lot stronger. It's going to give you more energy, and you're going to get more strength out of it. So creatine and monohydrate is an all-around very, very effective supplement for anyone. Actually, even if you're trying to lose weight, creatine monohydrate is very effective. Then we've got whey protein. Again, whey protein, simple replacement for protein. It's proven to, induce muscle hypertrophy while after training, all that sort of stuff. It's not necessary, but it is a great supplement to take. Then we've got fish oil, which is a general health supplement, reduces inflammation. And also, I think a study a year ago, it was the first thing to be proven anabolic. It was slightly anabolic. So that's pretty cool if, you're trying to build some muscle. Now, the ones that, we talked about testosterone boosters being rubbish. There's also BCAAs. Now, this is sold by so many people. It's meant to be drunk during training, all through the day, whatever it is. BCAA has been proven time and time again to be a waste. And it doesn't do anything. It's meant to prevent muscle breakdown, but you need all the essential amino acids for muscle breakdown not to fully occur, and also for you to build muscle. So BCAAs is not a good supplement. If you want to drink something intra-workout during your training, it would be essential amino acids, which are about the same price, but not sold as much because they're much more expensive. So BCAAs is not ideal. Then we've got what other supplements that people take and preach. There's a lot of supplements and pre-workouts that are effective and they do have their place. I would recommend just a normal pre-workout. There's a lot of pre-workouts out there. Find what's good for you. If you do like taking pre-workout, if you don't, it's not a big deal. Just take a shot of coffee. You don't need to take anything. Whatever gets you in the moment to train is awesome. However, I do want to talk about something that I probably missed, and that would be nutrition. And I wanted to talk about meal timing. So meal timing is a big thing amongst bodybuilders. You know, you've probably heard it all on TV. You got to eat 6 meals a day. You know, 6 small meals a day to increase your metabolism, speed up your metabolism. That's garbage. That's not true at all. I eat quite frequently because I like to eat. That's the only reason I eat quite frequently. What they found in studies to build muscle and to induce muscle protein synthesis, which we talked about before, which is the main driving force behind adaptive responses to exercise, so building muscle essentially. We want to induce muscle protein synthesis as frequently as possible to get the most muscle growth. And muscle protein synthesis is ideally induced every 4 to 6 hours through a spike in protein, right? So you want to be eating theoretically every 4 to 6 hours and spacing those meals out. So, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is a pretty good way to start. Now, I do like snacking on something small in the middle, but for myself and for my clients, because you tend to get hungry, but you don't need to be very religious with your meal timing. As long as you're getting your overall protein intake for the day, you're going to be fine. Optimally, you want to be spiking it and eating it. To spike your muscle protein synthesis is a bit more complicated. But spike your muscle protein synthesis, you need 3 to 4 grams of leucine, which is an amino acid, which comes from a complete protein, which is about 25 grams of protein for most things. Like a lot of vegan things, it comes up to 50, 60 grams of that, for example. In whey protein, I think it's about 25 grams, I think you need, or something like that, or 22 maybe, something like that to spike muscle protein synthesis. Once you spike it, it's spiked. So, and you know, you've induced it. So you want to have 3 satisfying protein sources throughout the day. Like not 3, it can be more, but you know what I mean? So you want to spike it 3 times during the day by eating a big protein source of, you know, a decent amount of protein serving. So ideally spread your protein out today. Don't spread it too thin, essentially. All right. Have I talked about everything with supplements? So creatine monohydrate. Yeah, we said 5 grams a day. I'll take. You don't need to do any loading phase if you ever buy creatine monohydrate. Just buy the simplest, cheapest form you can get. The cheapest, simplest packaging you can get. Creatine monohydrate is so cheap they don't even market it. It's so effective. There's so many studies on this. Whey protein, I'd just take a scoop after training, maybe 1 in the morning. Yeah, that's only if necessary. It's more for you know, if for a convenience factor. Fish oil, I'd take about 4 to 6 grams a day for general health, reducing inflammation, and that slightly anabolic effect they proved in research a couple of years ago. But yeah, they're the main supplements I would take. There's a few vitamins and stuff. You just generally don't want to be vitamin deficient. A big one I see these days is iron in amongst women, and vitamin D, which is mostly in the Western culture because you don't get out in the sun. So make sure you're not deficient in those two. Those two are pretty big ones. Just because a majority of the population are, not a majority, a lot of people in the population are deficient in them and they don't even realize it. So best thing to do is get your blood work done first. Once you know your blood work and you know everything's cool, then you can chill out a little bit. But make sure to get it done at least once if you're training and, you know, working hard. And if you do take creatine monohydrate and you are training, and you do end up getting blood work, your creatinine is going to be spiked, and that's not a problem. That's not an issue with your kidneys. That's what happens. We're not going to go into what happens because it's too complicated. But don't worry if your creatinine levels are spiked in your blood work if you're taking creatine monohydrate and training very hard. Now, I tried to get as much through of that as across to you as possible. I just wanted to say, everyone, thanks for watching and thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or anything, you can always hit me up on Facebook at Jude D'Souza PT / Jude D'Souza PT, Instagram Jude_DE, and yeah. And if you hit me up and you've watched this successfully so far, you've also gone in the running to win 2 free. You're not in the running. You have applied for 2 free online body transformation coaching sessions, which you can hit me up and we can organize over the phone, and I'll be happy to take you through your further goals and maybe, you know, pack some muscle onto you. I hope everyone's enjoyed that. Yeah. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.